Here we go. We are recording. Good afternoon, Caroline. Thank you so much for being here today with me.
Hey, Laura, it's lovely to see you. Lovely to be with you.
Yeah, we just had some technical issues. We were meant to be live with this conversation, but we are recording it. So hopefully people will enjoy it anyway. And I hope to be able to see if somebody messages to ask you some questions, Caroline. If not, I'm sure there's going to be a possibility to be in conversation also afterwards with those who are interested.
I'm sure we can try again at some point. We're completely powerless over the internet sometimes.
Oh,
Aren't we?
so frustrating, so frustrating. I have to take many big breaths and
Sure,
not
sure.
to lose my patience with that. But
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm so excited and honored to be with you here today. I've been knowing you in a long time now, since many years, I would say nearly a decade. I've personally witnessed your creativity, your poetry. I read your books. I danced with you. I watched your movies. We've been in contact in many different ways throughout the years. And I also received some personal coaching and mentoring sessions. I've been with you in healing capacity. So, yeah, you have been present really in my journey with movement for sure in these last years of my life. So, thank you so much for being here. I would like
Most
to
welcome.
to invite you to share a little bit about where are you right now in your journey.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you for that, Laura. And yeah, it's lovely to connect with you and to be connecting with you over this period of time. We've shared a lot, and it's been a really interesting journey. As it has with many women that I connect with over the years, and men. But we're on a very particular journey at the ages that we are, and yeah, so there's a lot to connect with. Where am I at the moment? Well, I 3.5, nearly 4 years ago, I moved to the little town of Hastings in East Sussex, and I live here now with my husband and our dogs, and have visiting grandchildren a lot of the time. And yeah, just my family are grown up. My own children. I'm in my 13th year now of menopause, and I'm still writing. I'm still holding workshops, teaching, guiding, being with the dance, and being with my creativity. I don't think I've let go of anything in particular. It's like it's an ongoing journey, but it does change, and some things become more important than others over time. Um, and yeah, it's a journey that I love. It's quite an unconventional journey that I'm on, but it's my journey, and it's the one that I love, and I enjoy it. I enjoy myself, and I like to kind of make sure that whatever I'm doing is enjoyable. I don't want to be doing things that I struggle with, or that there are some struggles, there are some challenges, as for anybody bringing their own creativity out into the world, into community. We have that, but as long as we're enjoying it and loving what we do, I think that's one of the most important things. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at the moment.
Thank you. So you repeated this word, enjoy and enjoyment. It seems that it's so important, such an important reminder for all of us.
Yeah. Oh, I think so. I think so. And sometimes when people say, oh, I'm a bit lost, or I don't quite know what to do about my work or my vocation, or just how I live my life. And it's like, well, what are you doing to bring more joy into it? What does bring joy into your existence? And that's the primary question, really. What would make you happy? What would be more contentment, more acceptance? And those are the key things I feel that we need to be asking ourselves.
Wow. And it seems that your creative flow didn't stop. The river was moving also when you transition towards menopause and post menopause. And when you ask this question about how to bring more joy and what is it that bring you joy, I also wonder, how to pose with that question when we're struggling, how to pose with that question when there are difficult events or losses, or simply when the body is changing. And many women in this transition suffer also, from mood swings, insomnia, you name it. It can be difficult for people.
Yeah, and as I say, mine was a long time ago now, but it lasted for a very expansive time. So I would say that the change started to begin for me in my mid-40s, probably before that, but I didn't notice it. But it was definitely around that time. And I had a very, very sort of persistent inquiry into it. I was very curious about menopause. I had my children. I'd become a grandmother. I wanted to know what menopause was all about. I hadn't particularly had a difficult time with my menses. And I know for some women, it is difficult and challenging. So, obviously we're all different. And it's really important to remind ourselves of that there's no one size fits all with the menopause, with our menses, obviously. But I wanted to have my menopause. I wanted to know what it would be like. I was curious about it. My mother had told me that I would probably have my menopause at 50 because she had hers at 50. She didn't have a particularly difficult time with it. She says she didn't even notice it, but I don't quite believe that. I think she just wasn't that conscious of her body in that way. And but she said I would start my periods when I was 13 because she did. So we were exactly on time with each other. We had the same pattern. So at 50, I stopped bleeding, and it was it was that time where I'd been going through quite a few years of night sweats and hot flushes and all kinds of changes going on in my body. I was noticing these things and struggling with them a bit, the mood swings, the changes. I was also in quite a new relationship. So it's one thing to be in a relationship where you've been with the guy for a number of years and suddenly your body's changing and they can grow with you within that. But to suddenly jump into bed with a whole, fresh new lover and like you're sweating and you're saying, well, it's all right. It's like lubrication. It's all right. I've got a towel handy. Don't worry. It was kind of like, sometimes a bit off-putting for him and a bit like, wow, this is weird. But we managed, and it was grand. It was okay. And I really viewed that as this deep detoxification and cleansing of my body. And so I welcomed it, even though it was really uncomfortable and not very pleasant. When you've got loads of clothes on, you're starting to tear them off in the supermarket or on the bus or whatever, and it's like this hot flush is happening, and it's so, oh God, do you have to happen now? But there you go, it does. And you start to adapt and get used to that and say, well, what am I going to wear today that's going to be comfortable if I have to start stripping off? And shall I even take a wet flannel in a bag with me or something like that? I know they have all these wet ones and things now, these wipes, but I was definitely the wet flannel in a bag kind of girl. That would work for me. But yeah, that was uncomfortable. That wasn't particularly pleasant. But it was okay as well. I had to change my attitude towards it to, this is like in the dance when you get really hot and sweaty and you're detoxing some stuff that needs to move out, and it's not a bad thing. So changing my mind about things that were uncomfortable was really important. And just going with it, imagining myself in a sweat lodge, that sort of stuff. So then I had other things going on. Obviously, there's all sorts of changes that go on with the skin and the muscles, and I had achy joints and bones and that sort of thing. That was all part of it. But what I did most importantly for me at the time was I had 2 years of not really working. And it was almost as if life knew that I would need this period of time where my work did start to slow down quite a lot. And there were times where I thought, oh gosh, am I losing my work? Am I losing my ability to really work and to do the things that I love to do? But it wasn't quite like that. And there would be a few things that would, you know, that I would be working with. But mostly I wanted to sit and write. And I wanted to go on this really deep inquiry into what is mine to do now? What is my actual medicine? What is important for me as this woman, as this elder, as this, you know, growing into my crone years? Not yet, but getting there. What is it that I actually have to offer? And so those 2 years and more years after that, I really spent listening quietly. We did have a yurt in the garden at the time. I spent a lot of time in there just being creative. And I made this very big collage, you know, which included my blood and different things within it. And sort of trying to understand what was happening for me from that place of creativity, so that, you know, and this is why I think creativity is so vital for us, for any of us at any time, because when we're being creative, it's really great to just get the mind out of the way and just let something flow onto the page, onto the paper, through the writing, through the drawing, into the garden, into nature, whatever it is that we do, the songs we sing, or the poetry, it doesn't matter. But to just be creative with that natural flow, we then have a visual representation of something that's coming through us, that's being dreamt through us. And there's a lot to learn from that. So my idea of creativity is not just to be creative and to produce something. It's about, what can I learn from this process as spirit moves through me and onto the page, onto the paper, whatever I'm working with, whatever medium. It's showing me something about myself. So that was my primary purpose there in that year, during that time, was to see what wanted to manifest, and to ask myself that question: what is mine to be and do in the world? Like, who am I here? What's my medicine? Yeah. And it took me on a long journey through my life story and all the experiences that I have had, and like a great big jigsaw puzzle almost. I'm sort of putting out in front of me and saying, well, what does this mean? And what does that mean? And how can I sculpt my life from those experiences? And what have they taught me? So it's a bit like the university of our own life. And that was utterly fascinating for me. You know, I spent so much time with that until, and, you know, life was going on at the same time. You know, I've got my family, I've got my husband, I'm starting to work a lot more again, I'm traveling. But all those experiences were feeding into this inquiry. And then I started to recognize my own particular body of work. And that was one of the key things for me. And suddenly it was appearing, you know, it was showing me. And what I realized was I'd already lived it. I'd already lived all of this information. I just hadn't put it together in this form of you know, recognizing what was mine, what my soul's journey was about, bringing it here into this space, into my life now, and then finding a way to share that with others. Yeah. And utterly fascinating.
Thank you. I just noticed myself actually sort of after the discombobulation of technology, while you were talking, I just felt myself sort of slowing down a little bit with you while you were sharing about this journey in the earth. And you say that suddenly in those 2 years, it seemed as if you were doing less or working less, but there was something else actually that was going on. Something else was unfolding and unraveling for you until you put all these pieces together, and then your body of work somewhat, it felt that it was already there and it was talking to you. Until then it took a very specific and unique, I would say, shape. And so it seems to me that that piece of slowing down and going inward and listening and writing has been a key piece in this journey.
Oh, absolutely. And I feel very blessed to have had that time. And it's not like I was in there all the time doing that. You know, obviously life was going on, as I said.
Mm.
But I feel very fortunate to have had those years of really taking the time to listen and not just dismissing it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think for some, and particularly my mother and others that I've had a chat with about it, that they haven't given the time
Mm.
to really reflect on their menopause, on this changing period of time,
Mm-hmm.
and been too busy, whether with
Mm-hmm.
family work or whatever, to really give it the attention it deserves,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a very, very potent time for us as
Mm-hmm.
women, and it's been ignored over
Mm-hmm.
centuries. It's, I mean, I read recently that the only books you could find up until the 1970s were books written by men
Wow,
about the menopause.
it's
We
incredible.
haven't actually had the time to, I mean, obviously there's a lot of books now about it written by women, but it's kind of interesting that our mothers, our grandmothers probably didn't have much knowledge, didn't have much deep understanding apart from what the men were telling them was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And there are all kinds of stories there and information about, our madness, our craziness, it's all uncomfortable. Let's find a pharmaceutical company that can create something to, yeah,
Yeah,
the story there. We know what
yeah,
that's about. I
yeah.
mean, I'm not saying that isn't great for some women. Some women have really needed some support and help from a pharmaceutical level, but sometimes when it's dished out just as, well, this is what you do when you get to
Mm-hmm.
that particular age, that's not healthy. That's not okay. That's taking the responsibility well away from any woman's growth and empowerment of that journey. Yeah. So plenty of things that we can do to help us at some of those difficult times. Personally, I didn't want to read a book about it. I didn't want to take any remedies or anything at all. I wasn't interested in doing anything about it. I wanted to experience every uncomfortable moment. And that was very, very key for me.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to just rest back into what the experience was and what was happening to my body, so that I knew what it meant at that time. So if a hot flush came, and yeah, it was difficult. So okay, but what's dreaming through right now? If I was to write from this place, what would I discover?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if I was to draw a crazy mad picture, what would I see in it? Yeah. Can I connect to my ancestors, the ancestors of my lineage, of the women that came before me? Can I connect to them at this time? What would they have to say to me? It's a magical time.
Mm. Thank you. Yeah, I feel the poetry. I'm touched actually, and it's so unusual. I feel also in our culture, because even if certainly, yes, we have much more books now and women are talking about it, so we're not in the 70s or earlier any longer. And yet we live in this culture that wants to fix things very quickly
Oh,
and
yeah.
very solution oriented. Something happens, we have to find a solution, goal oriented. And then there is so much that can get lost, actually, if we don't allow ourselves to, as you described so powerfully, to be with the experience, actually fully be in it with all the discomfort and not glamorous bits, and yes, be
Yeah.
with the medicine, with the magic of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
It's precious. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then we don't know who we are. If
Mm-hmm.
we've ignored that period of time, we don't actually know who we are and who
Mm-hmm.
we're growing into and what our power fully is. It's the empowerment of our elderhood, of our,
Mm-hmm.
crone, of whatever we want to call it, the wise woman, the matriarch. It's like that needs to be able to come through.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise we stay like, young women that haven't fully matured in that
Mm-hmm.
place. And there's nothing to fear in it. There's nothing to be ashamed of in it. There's nothing to try and hide from with it. You know, let our wrinkles shine, let our gray hairs come through, let ourselves be as natural and wild and free as we need to be, and grow into that elder. And that's beautiful medicine for us. But like you've said, society is, you know, it's that quick fix, you know, that we find everywhere, and the kind of this need to not age.
Mm-hmm.
Why not age, you know, when it's one of the most powerful experiences we can have?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're taught to fear it, we're taught that there's something wrong with it.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, you know, this is a, I love this time, you know, I'm 62, 63 this year, and I love this time of my life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, yeah, okay, there's some things that I can't do like I used to, and I might miss those now and again. But when I really feel into it, I'm not, you know, I don't mind. It's like, it's okay, because there's so much more wisdom here now, and I would rather be with that.
Thank you. Which leads me actually to ask you, what's your definition of power in this life stage? Yeah.
My definition, well, it's the empowerment of the feminine, which I've always, you know, that it feels like that's been a big part of my own journey, is the empowerment of the feminine, from being a little girl whose mother really wanted me to be a very particular kind of little girl. And she's admitted all these things to me. She's long gone now from this planet, but she's you know, she told me all these things, that what she really wanted from me. And I had this very wild spirit as a little girl, you know, which developed as tantrums and kind of getting very cross a lot of the time. But I definitely had this very wild spirit, and there was sexual abuse in my family, so that had an impact on my femininity, of course. And then, you know, lots of challenges that happened throughout my adolescence and young adulthood, all of that, you know, so very difficult circumstances that I had to find my way through. So my femininity was, you know, it's certainly lacking in esteem. You know, I have a lot of problems around that, and I was a very shy, quiet person. I had to do a lot of work on myself to bring myself back to more wholeness, to let go of a lot of the conditioning that I had, so that what I could truly find was my innate essence, wisdom, you know, the value of myself. And so this word power, where does it come from? You know, it's sometimes it's frowned upon. You know, power is seen as something rather ugly in the world, but for me, it's a soul power, our true essence. The power that I hold within me is connected to my soul, and so that empowerment, literally for me, means a reclaiming of my fullness of being, my soul purpose, the reason why I'm here, what brings me joy, my sovereignty. And that for me is where my power lies. And you know, as soon as I know what my purpose fully is, which I feel only really comes when we've lived so much of our life and explored it and understood it and made meaning of it, and then as we grow with that, you know, the soul shines through much more fully, and that sovereignty, that power place within us that we were actually born with. You know, I really believe, I call it the golden child inquiry, because it's this golden purity that we are born with our complete soul, you know, coming into the world. Over time, you know, we can become at that light, that golden light becomes diminished because of conditioning, because of the experiences and challenges that we have. And our work on this planet now is to uncover that light, to allow it to shine through once more. That we have to go through all the difficulties, understand what's happened to us, understand some of the stories that we've lived through, until we can release so much of that, you know, shed those skins, and come into the fullness of our being, reclaiming that sovereign light that we were born with. That's empowerment for me. where the soul can truly shine. I don't believe it's something that, you know, we've got to try and get our power from outside of ourselves somewhere and step up more fully into the world by in any shape or form. It's more about just, yeah, be myself. Can I truly be myself? Can I be my soul? And if I don't know why I'm here, which I believe is something that was there at our birth or even conception, if I don't know why I'm here and I don't cultivate that and I don't understand it and I don't find some way to bring it forward into my life, then that becomes lost. And our sovereignty, our joy for life is never fulfilled, because I need to know who I am before that light can really shine. And that's the inquiry for me. And I call it from innocence to sovereignty. That's the body of work that I'm with. It's like, it's already here. You just have to unmask, you know, you know, what the personality or what it is that we've created to in place of our sovereignty, in order to just go, hey, you know, this is who I truly am. And to accept that and to be honest with ourselves around that, and to make our presence known, to be able to bring our gifts into the world. Because when you're bringing your gift out, your talent, when you're bringing it out, whatever it is, and you feel that joy of sharing it, then you know your soul is shining. Then you know that your sovereignty is present. And it might disappear for moments at a time. You know, suddenly it might be like, oh, I've got all that stuff coming up again and it's a bit creaky and groany and yeah, I'm not feeling that comfortable with myself. But it comes back and we get to see it again, and it shines, and we get to know, yeah, this is what makes me joyful. When I'm in service to the greater good, I'm happy there. So when I'm offering my work, when I'm really sharing it and, you know, writing whatever it is, whatever the next book is that I'm writing, or, you know, developing some aspect of Middle Earth medicine, my body of work, there is joy. And I'm content and happy with that. So yeah, there's not much more to do around power for me than just empower my soul to shine, to be free, and to do what brings me joy, which we talked about at the beginning of this.
Yeah, it feels like closing a circle a little bit. And yeah, I want to ask you so many things, but I'm also a little bit aware of time. So I would like to ask you, what would you say, you know, because as you were talking about the light, for example, that gets a little bit dim throughout life because of, you know, because life happens and we forget. And the same, I feel, happens with creativity as well.
Yeah.
We are light beings, we are creative beings, and yet we may forget, or we may lose some of that along the way. I often have conversations with women actually want to reclaim more of their soul life and more of their creativity. It seems that they are really dancing together. So what would you say, you know, coming from your own personal and professional experience, to those women who are struggling and a little bit lost, or maybe they don't have the time, or they're dealing, you know, with an aging parent, you know, those things also that happens in this stage of life, you know, or maybe they had their children late and so they're dealing with teenagers. So let's say life is, you know, happening, but they want it, but they don't know how. What would you say?
Well, do you know, people often say to me, you know, I'm just not the creative type, or not, you know, I don't do creative things. And I just say to them, you know, you are a creative being. You are being creative every moment of your life. every time you share your voice, every time you speak, every time you find an expression in your face, every time you sing a song, or every time you cook a meal, or do the washing up, or look after your home, you're being creative. You know, dance is creative. Yeah, how you communicate in the world is creative. So stop thinking of yourself as not being a creative being. Yeah. And I think that is one of the key things that helps people to just switch mind around, oh, I'm not being creative. You're creative with your children, you know, but start to view it like that. Yeah. And start to look at the things you do in your life that could be creative, that actually are, oh yeah, that thing that I did this morning when I was putting my makeup on, or when I was brushing my hair, or, you know, singing that song in the shower, whatever it is, oh yeah, I was being creative in that moment. And once you start to change your perspective on things, then more can start to come through. But, you know, we tend to shut the door on things because we think it doesn't look like a beautiful painting or a piece of poetry, or we've, you know, some musical endeavor that we've embarked on, or you know, whatever it is, because we think of creativity as the arts. You know, creativity is in everything. So we have to kind of change our mind a little bit about what creativity is. Yeah, gardening is creative, architecture, mathematics is creative. You ask a mathematician, they say, yes, it's actually really creative. It's a creative process, put numbers together. Yeah, so stop trying to think that creativity is, you know, making things and sculpting and what we make, and the you know, all those kind of things. But, you know, it depends what somebody actually wants to be doing. When they feel they're not being creative, like, what does that actually mean? And then sometimes, you know, in the model that I created, it's that we look back on our childhoods. Well, what were the things that brought me joy then? You know, I wasn't an artist particularly when I was a kid. You know, it wasn't that I did amazing paintings or anything like that, but I had a very creative mind. You know, it was like I was creating all sorts of things all the time. But they wouldn't have called me an artist. My brother was the artist, you know. He was the one that made sculptures and really amazing, still does, you know. He's an extraordinary person. My sister's creative. She does wonderful knitwear, you know, these cardigans and really beautiful stuff. They're both incredibly artistic. My mother was really artistic. You know, she was a fantastic drawer, and I didn't seem to be creative at all. I was out with the animals all the time. I was in nature all the time. I was creating story all the time. My mind was so creative, you know, and which led into all my shamanic kind of love of nature and the spirit world and the soul world. Yeah. So you have to identify what is your own creative energy, yourself. What is it? What do you love doing? What have you loved doing in the past? What excites you? What do you feel drawn to? You know, get creative with that. You know, and don't get fixated on, oh, it should be a certain thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where I'm coming from with all of that. Do you know, sit by your fire, and look into the flames. So much creativity there. And then imagine that, you know, that little flame is burning deep inside your own belly, that there's a little beautiful flame growing there, and it just wants you to wake up and experience something new. You know, get curious. Curiosity is a magical thing. Be curious about life. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, this was gold for me just to hear you. It was such a potent reframe, actually, about creativity and highlighting this difference, so to speak, between the arts and making a sculpture versus actually being in a creative process with everything that we're doing really in our life. And these important questions you asked, and this reminder also about curiosity. I feel that is very important. It's something that I repeat to myself as well. So yeah, I think that many women can take on board a few things that you said today. And I also would like to ask you what's happening with your work right now, and do you have any offering, and what people can do with it nowadays?
That is, I'm very creative with that. I mean, I do have a lot of different offerings. One of the things that I do, and I'm halfway through it at the moment with a group, it's called the 13-week soul retrieval process. And that's wonderful. For 13 weeks, we meet once a week, and we go around the wheel of soul's return, which is basically a wheel that I created out of, there you go, I'm being creative there, out of my own life story and how I came to find my most potent medicine, what was mine to bring into the world. And I saw that it had there was a circle. I saw that it had this particular journey that I had been on. And then when I started to draw it and write it down, and it showed itself to me through the creativity that I was working with at the time. And yeah, so we travel around the wheel, and we find what that same thing, we find that medicine that is particularly ours, and what we need to give more attention to and acceptance to. So yeah, I'm working with that, and that starts again in April. I have a membership starting on my website, so I'm getting creative with that, like, so people can join a membership and we meet online. All sorts of workshopy things going on there, and more information on the website. And then I'm still doing my weekend workshops and my residential workshops. We have a sweet little venue just up the road to me, which is a residential where people can come and stay for a few days at a time, and we go through particular processes. So I've just finished one called the Crohn's Rite, which was specifically around menopause and what's our right as the crone, and the rites of passage we might need to do around that. But I work a lot with the mandala, with the work of polarity, so bringing opposites together and finding the essence of polarity within us, because we were born in a polarity. The moment our little egg was conceived, when that conceivement process began within us, and the little eggs like split into two, there's that little polarity beginning, that little mandala itself. And life just expands from that moment into many polarities, just like in the flower of life. So we're always living within polarity. So that's it's kind of my medicine. That's kind of what I work mostly with, a bit of the edge walker there of my shamanic work that I do. But yeah, I have all kinds of offerings, and they're all found on my website, different workshops, mandala workshops and creativity workshops, and lots of dance, of course, and creative writing. I mean, I have this constant flow of my offerings, which is, it's part of what I do. I'm self-employed. I've got to get it from somewhere, put it out there. Nobody's going to say to me, hey, come and do this work or that work, and give me a paycheck at the end of the week. I have to create it myself, so I've got to be creative. And that's where my creativity goes these days, is into what can I develop from what I do, and how can I best be of service to others in this place. So yeah, I'm busy. I'm pretty busy. I mean, I have my grandchildren to stay, and and then focus on them and what their needs are. But on the whole, I'm just loving my creative processes. So, yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, I could definitely see the sparkle. Yeah. When you talk about it.
Lockdown put me online quite a bit, and that was great. I was able to be in my garden shed, focusing on online with all of that. I didn't mind that at all. I don't travel as much as I used to. I was traveling a lot, and that's kind of, I'm stepping back a little bit from that. As I get older, I don't particularly want to be jumping on flights, and I don't want to anyway. It doesn't feel quite right to be doing that. But I have just come back from Prague, We had a lovely workshop there. And yeah, there are places that I will go. But I quite enjoy being online, and I love working locally in the town that I live in as well. So it's a lovely community of dancers here. So that's been really great.
So somebody who is going to listen to the interview could also invite you eventually for a
Oh,
work.
of course. Oh, absolutely. I love invitations.
Yeah. And before we close, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you would like to share, or a question that you would ask yourself that I haven't asked?
Sure, there are hundreds of things that we could talk about, all kinds of different areas. But no, I think, it's been lovely to have this conversation and to remind myself, of my creativity, and remind myself of my, the fact that, menopause has brought so much into the world for me, and such a changing time for me, that I really value. And so, I love supporting other women around that. But no, I don't know what other questions you could ask me. I was looking at what questions could you ask?
Maybe catch one from the tail. I think it was.
There could be something, couldn't there? Yeah, absolutely. But hey, it's just lovely to connect with you and
Yeah,
other wonderful women and people out there as well.
yeah.
Delighted
And
to be able to
yeah,
share.
and we can also do another time alive if that is something that suits you. But
Yeah,
once
sure.
I put this on the online, people can still contact you or contact me
Yeah,
if
of
there are any
course. Yeah.
questions or if something wasn't clear or they're curious about something specific. So
Yeah, sure. And my membership is going live very soon now off my website, and it's an opportunity then to meet once a month in a live video Zoom meeting, and to work together, to keep working together with
brilliant.
all these topics that we've been speaking about. So I'm,
Yeah,
I'm really looking forward to having that and
brilliant.
connecting to more people around the world.
Yeah. Yeah, it has been super inspiring to talk to you, Caroline. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome, Lara, and much love
Yeah,
for you. And
thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you for
you.
being curious about
Thank you.
what I'm up to.
Thank you. Thank you.